Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura, donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte. Aquí se queda una clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
¡Viva Cuba! ¡Viva Cuba! ¡Viva Cuba!
Se despierta para ver
¡Comandante! ¡Che Guevara! ¡Presente!
Saxe O'Hara in front of the Cuban Embassy in this day, which is a day of mourning, but here everybody is singing and singing in the memorial of Fidel Castro. What's the meaning? That his legacy will continue.
Yeah, I mean the reason that we're outside the Cuban Embassy in London right now singing and dancing is because in fact we are celebrating the life of Fidel Castro, and the reason we are celebrating the life of Fidel Castro is because we recognise the contribution he's made to humanity, to the dignity of human beings, and also the fact that they tried to take Fidel Castro away from us 50 years ago and they didn't manage it. So it's absolutely fantastic, and we're celebrating 90 years of Fidel Castro, and we're celebrating the continuation of socialism in Cuba.
What will happen, according to you, what will happen now in Cuba and in the world?
Cuba always say we're in the process of building socialism, and that is so important to say you're in the process of building socialism. They don't say we have socialism, and the reason I'm saying that is because the revolution in Cuba was not one person. The revolution in Cuba was not Fidel Castro. He was one integral part to it. So the revolution and socialism and building socialism in Cuba will continue, as it always has done. It is not one person, it is many, many people. Obviously, Fidel Castro was the illustration of what happened in Cuba, but it continues, of course it continues. As long as Fidel Castro is in people's minds and the words that he's spoken are in people's heads, the revolution in Cuba will continue.
International unites the human race. And so, viva Cuba socialista! Viva! Viva Fidel! Viva! Viva Che! Viva! Viva Raúl! Viva!
Souza, you are from Brazil. What's the importance of Fidel Castro for Latin America?
Hello, my name is Souza. I have commendation. This is my importance today. Confrontation. This is my Fidel Castro. I love this. My competence. This is defines the life. It's very good for me. I have very communist. I love. It's my culture in Brazil. It's my president Lula Inácio da Silva. I similar Fidel Castro. It's my important today. This is convive the many people now. This is information to finish the Fidel Castro now. Thank you very much.
Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final.
So here you are now British, but your origins are from Jamaica, and you also lived in Cuba for some time in your life. What do you remember about your life in Cuba?
So I went to Cuba when I was 12 and I left when I was 14, and I just remember like a sense of community, people like looking after each other, and also like my education was amazing. When I came, I went to a local school with all the other Cuban children in my neighborhood, and when I came back I was like 2 years ahead of everybody. Yeah, so I remember like really a culture of caring and
What do you feel tonight?
I feel really, really sad because I feel like Fidel Castro, his legacy was really, really beautiful. Like despite like Western criticism, compared to my country, Jamaica, like he really advanced like medicine, he advanced education, and people just don't realize how much of a gift that is to have.
And why was Fidel Castro so much attacked by USA and also by many other countries in the world?
Well, I think they felt that his principles were a threat to like their sort of social setup, which is capitalism, and America feel that everybody should listen to them and what they say is right. And he decided, what you're saying is just not good for our country. And so I think that was the beginning of like the West beginning to treat or sort of alienate Castro and demonize him, when actually I feel like he was quite principled and he was trying to do the best for his nation.
Trump said he's celebrating this death. How do you reply to Donald Trump?
To be honest, as a world leader, I just find it disgusting and distasteful. Despite like different political beliefs, at the end of the day you have to respect him. He was a leader, and he's done many good things for his nation. So I think it's really distasteful, and it's not a great way to start a presidency. So it will be really interesting to see how the relationship develops with Cuba.
So it's our duty now, if we're going to stand here with pictures of Fidel with Cuban flags, to fight against British imperialism, and as Jay said, to create 1, 2, 3 many Vietnams. We need to create problems for Theresa May. We need to create problems for the British state. And wherever we are, we need to take on our local councils. We need to build a movement against poverty, against war and racism. ¡Vivan los trabajadores del mundo!
Andrew George, 27 years old, when Fidel Castro went to power in Cuba, you were not even born, probably your parents were children, but now you are here to commemorate El Comandante. Why? Why is his legacy important also for young people today?
Because today in Britain and around the world we're still suffering under the dictatorship of capital from imperialism. So my father wasn't born until tens of years after Fidel Castro managed to lead a successful revolution in Cuba against US imperialism, colonialism and for socialism. And we're inspired here today. I'm from a group called the Revolutionary Communist Group, and we're fighting for the same ideals as Fidel, for social justice, for the liberation of women, against racism, against the US, against Britain, and for the people.
So the reason we're commemorating the life of Fidel Castro and celebrating him as a great revolutionary is, that he was not just a Cuban revolutionary, he was an international revolutionary, and the ideals and the legacy of the Cuban Revolution is something that will carry on past his mortal existence. The ideas that he and the Cuban communists, Che Guevara, all of the Cuban revolutionaries, the ones that they put forward, are ideas that are going to last for decades and decades and decades. And it's not just about Cuba, it's about the effect of the Cuban revolution all around the world. The liberation of Namibia and South Africa from apartheid, the liberation of Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique from colonialism. This would not have happened without Cuba. And the ideals that they are spreading around the world are so different to the British Empire, the British imperialist state. Britain sends soldiers all across the world, but Cuba is sending doctors, and this is something we should learn about. And it's a shame there's not more people here from the British left, so that means we need to change the attitudes of people on the British left, and they should respect and appreciate what's been achieved in Cuba.
Trump is celebrating the death of Fidel Castro. How do you reply to Trump?
One day we will dance on his grave.
El día que el triunfo alcancemos, ni esclavos ni buenos habrá. El paraíso, patria de la humanidad. Agrupémonos todos en la lucha final.
And Sisa is from Colombia and Steve from England. And now you are commemorating Fidel Castro here in front of the Cuban Embassy. Today is a day of sorrow, but it is also, as I see here, the atmosphere is also a day of hope somehow, because his legacy, what about it? It will not be lost? Huh?
No, I completely agree with you. Today is a very sad day for all of the oppressed and the exploited of the world, for all progressive humanity. We have lost one of the greatest men of our century. One could say that Fidel was obviously a legendary revolutionary in the context of Cuba, but he also meant so much to the rest of the world, to the poor and the exploited and the oppressed. As a communist, I'm greatly saddened by his death.
Did you meet him?
I did have the privilege of meeting him very briefly in 1978 at the World Festival of Youth and Students in Havana. And I was overcome even then by his generosity. I was staying in a hotel with other delegates to the youth festival, and he personally, remember, he was president of his country, and he came round personally to make sure that everyone was comfortable, everyone had enough food, everyone was being taken care of. That moved me greatly. But more than anything else, what moves me as an internationalist is the role that he played in ensuring that Cuba's people talk about Cuba as exporting sugar, exporting tobacco. No, Cuba exports doctors. Cuba exports doctors, exports teachers. For a small, poor country, Cuba under socialism has done more for the Western Hemisphere, for the Third World, than anyone else, and Fidel is largely to blame for that. And the reason that Fidel, in a Third World country, was able to live to the age of 90 is because he benefited from a health service that he himself had created.
And about Colombia, about Latin America, the importance of Cuban Revolution has been is very well known. Okay, what is the importance? Now, what about the future? Because many governments which were leftist government in Latin America have been overturned by polls and sometimes by the sudden deaths of, for example, Hugo Chavez. So what will happen now in Latin America? Will turn right again, or somehow the lesson of Cuba will last for the future?
Fidel en Latinoamérica es un buen ejemplo. Desde el momento en que Fidel llegó al poder en 1959, se desató una ola bien interesante en América Latina. Muchos pueblos, muchos jóvenes, muchos hombres y mujeres quisieron seguir su ejemplo. Caso concreto, Colombia. En Colombia algunos movimientos se generaron, como el caso del Ejército de Liberación Nacional, que quiso seguir el ejemplo de Fidel Castro. En Venezuela también, en Centroamérica. Fidel Castro fue un ejemplo no solamente en la parte desde el punto de vista del combate revolucionario a través de las armas, también se convirtió en un ejemplo de movimientos pacíficos para llegar al poder. Él fue un inspirador, inspiró, por ejemplo, a Hugo Chávez para que llegara al poder sin necesidad de las armas, al comandante, jefe en guardia de la revolución ecuatoriana, Rafael Correa, a Evo Morales y a muchos otros. En Colombia fue uno de los generadores y fue el gran inspirador de que el proceso de paz en Colombia, que se acabó de firmar el jueves, un día antes, y esto es bien importante para la historia, un día antes se firmó el acuerdo de paz en Colombia. Al día siguiente Fidel muere, y yo creo que él muere feliz, porque una de las preocupaciones de Fidel era que se firmara el proceso de paz en Colombia, y se logró. Y al día siguiente él muere, o sea, él se va en paz, dejando uno de sus grandes deseos. Y hoy en día, a partir de este momento, Fidel renace en una juventud, renace en un nuevo pensamiento, renace en un nuevo ser, en un ser humanitario, con una visión de humanidad, de conciencia, de paz, de solidaridad, ya no de violencia, ya no de guerrilla, ya no de balas, ya no de fusiles, sino a través de una guerra, a través de la palabra, a través de las ideas, como debe ser, como se daba la dialéctica en la antigua Grecia. Era la idea, la palabra, la que combatía. Hoy en día, eso es lo que tenemos que generar. Abajo las armas, abajo todas las ojivas nucleares, no la guerra, no los combates, no Siria, no Irak, no Afganistán, no guerras en el mundo, guerra de palabra, guerra de ideas. Y todas esas armas, todo ese dinero que va a las armas, convirtámoslo en dinero de educación, en salud, en prosperidad social, bajo una influencia realmente de justicia social a través de todos los pueblos del mundo, de África, de Europa, de Asia, de América Latina. Eso era lo que decía Fidel. ¡Vamos! Y esa es la victoria, y hasta la victoria final.